What practical tools or mindset shifts helped you move from survival mode into a more empowered space?
I think the biggest mindset shift for me, well, I think about being in the hospital in general, like me and my husband had this mindset of like, we are a team and we're all on Meadow's team and we all want Meadow to get better. Cause I think sometimes when you're in the hospital, it becomes this like, you feel like you're on opposing forces. Like you have your medical team saying this, but like you're seeing this in the room, but you're never on opposing teams. You're actually on the same teams. But that was really important even for just as like us as a couple and our dynamic to always like be looking at each other and be like, we're on the same team here together. Like I know this is stressful, I know this is scary, but, like, we are a unit and being able to make decisions together because it would have been really easy for him to default to me and be like, "Okay, like, you're a medical provider that has basis, you make these decisions." But I always wanted to, like, give him the education to make the decision together as Meadow's parents. But I think even beyond, like, the hospital time, when I think about mindset-wise, I really had to figure out a way of, like, I have all of this grief and all of this trauma, and, like, I don't know exactly what to do with it, like, I've made it through made it through the bulk of my OCD stuff now, and I know how to manage my brain, but we still live with grief every day. I mean, it's been 3 years since Meadow was born, but, like, that was not the newborn experience that we hoped for or dreamed
Mhm.
of or envisioned or any of the things. And so to almost lose your child, like, there's no way that you, like, couldn't be different after that moment.
Mhm.
And so for me, like, I was like, "Okay, if I could turn this, like, grief into purpose somehow."
Hey, Sarah, welcome to the Awakened Heart podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming on the podcast today. And as I mentioned before, of course, my complex decided to do the roofs this week. So it's very loud out there, and they're on the roof and they're shouting and there's trucks and it's all that good banging. We'll see how good Riverside is to editing out the background noise, but we just roll with it, right?
Mhm, always
Yeah.
rolling with it.
Always rolling with it. I've got the door closed so the cat shouldn't come in and interrupt us. So we're good. We're good. So I'm really honored to be joined by you today. You're a powerhouse in both the nursing and
Mhm,
entrepreneurial world and a deeply inspiring human being. I You're the founder of Sarah Michelle NPR Reviews, chief nursing officer at Blueprint Test Prep, and a new board member for Conquering CHD starting in 2025. I love to hear about how your career has spanned oncology, intensive care, nursing education, and how your daughter Meadow was born with a severe congenital heart defects. And that is the journey that really shaped your life and purpose in profound ways. So, Sarah, take us back to the moment your world changed when you first learned about Meadow's heart condition. How did that moment reshape not just your motherhood journey, but your entire path forward?
I feel like I've had 2 really big before and after moments in my life. The first of which was the very first day I started my business, just because my life was so drastically different before becoming an entrepreneur and getting a taste of, like, time flexibility and just life flexibility and getting to do something I really loved and get paid for it. Like, that was a really cool moment for me. And I thought that the next before and after moment of my life would be selling that business because I went on to sell it right at the 2-year mark. And I tell you this because I sold my business in June of 2022. I was 8.5 months pregnant at the time, and I had no idea yet that my daughter was going to be sick. And so it was just 3 weeks later and a very, like, incidental finding, like, we thought everything was super good, like, we were just doing, like, the routine appointments at that point that we found out that actually she has 4 different heart defects, and everything that we thought about becoming first-time parents was gonna be totally different. Now, I am grateful in some ways that we didn't find out until the very end because there wasn't anything we could have done differently in the in between, like, we just had the
Mhm.
hope that she kept growing. Um, and I have so much gratitude to have the medical expertise. I'm certainly not a cardiologist, I'm a family nurse practitioner, but to have just, like, the basic foundational knowledge about what we were going to head into. Because for perspective, my daughter Meadow had her first heart surgery in her first week of life, and then went on to have 5 more surgeries by the time she was 6
Wow.
months old. And
Okay.
so our lot I mean, it was like the ultimate before and after moment. Like, the second we found out she was sick, everything that came after it shifted.
Yeah, that's a pretty profound. I mean, your precious little baby,
Teeny,
6
teeny little
months and having all those surgeries, that must have been something else and so heart-wrenching to see that
It
happen.
was a lot. I, like, look back on that time because Meadow will turn 3 in a couple of weeks,
Mhm.
and I'm like, it all feels, like, so intense, but, like, such a blur all in I feel like the newborn time in general is kind of a blur,
Mhm.
but with all of those, like, extra layers and how many days and weeks that we spent in the hospital, like, it
Mhm.
is all a giant blur.
In the first few months of her life was spent in the hospital, not knowing, like every time she went under anesthesia, not knowing if she was going to come out of it. And anything could have taken her at any moment. That must have been so stressful. And I know you've spoken about being diagnosed with OCD and anxiety following Meadow's birth. What were some of the early signs or internal warning bells you now realize you were experiencing at that time?
When people think about OCD, they always and I don't fault them for this, I used to do this too, but they always think about the stereotypical hand washing. And what I tell people and educate people about all the time with OCD is what OCD is, like, at its very core, if you just, like, boil it down to one sentence, it's an intolerance of uncertainty. And so when someone is washing their hands, they want to be absolutely certain that there are no germs, that they're not going to get sick. Like, there's this whole cascade of intrusive thoughts going on in their brain, right? And I didn't find out that I had OCD until after we made it through the bulk of Meadow's medical stuff. However, now knowing what I know about OCD, I know I've had it my whole life. And so where I really, really, really see it a lot is actually during my pregnancy. And so I did not tell anyone that I was pregnant until I was 34 weeks. Like, we didn't do maternity pictures until then. We didn't do any kind of public announcement. And I wouldn't have even done a public announcement, but I literally, as part of selling my business, there was a conference that I really needed to go to. And when you're that pregnant, like, there's no way to hide being that pregnant. So I kind of had to announce it in the moment 'cause it was going to be a very, like, public moment for me. But where the OCD shows up in that is just like this undercurrent and this thought of like, if I do this thing, something bad will happen. That's kind of like my flavor of OCD. And so it really like jarred me and rocked me to my core that I did the things that I was scared of. Like, I made the announcement. My friend threw me a surprise baby shower. I wasn't going to have a baby shower because I thought that would be bad luck. I did all these things. And then all of a sudden, I'm 36 weeks pregnant, finding out that my daughter has 4 heart defects. And
Wow.
so in my brain, I'm like, "I caused this?"
Uh,
Obviously, like, I'm a nurse practitioner, and there's logic and reasoning somewhere in my brain that I have access to sometimes to be like, "Her heart was formed at 6 weeks." Like, "You didn't
mm,
cause this in the last 2 weeks." But with OCD doesn't listen to logic, and
no,
when you are, like, in the heat of those emotions in
of
such, like, an
course.
intense time, like, it's really hard to grapple with.
Yeah, and I know that when I'm despite all the spiritual practice that I've done for many
Mhm.
years, literally when something comes on and it's something you're dealing with yourself, you know what you're supposed to do, but that fight or flight response comes in, the
Oh, yeah.
reptilian brain, the ache in the gut, and it's just so hard to come back to center, even with all your practices.
Well, I think on
It's
the spiritual
mhm,
side too, like, I very my whole pregnancy, literally my entire pregnancy, I felt like something was wrong,
mhm,
and I kept getting told over and over, like, in a nice way, like, "You're being kinda crazy right now. Like, you're being really anxious right now. Like, we've done all these ultrasounds, she is fine."
mhm. You knew
But
intuitively.
I knew. I really, really knew. I was like from the second I got pregnant, I was like, "Something feels off." Like, it just doesn't feel totally right. But I
Mm,
obviously couldn't, like, name what that was.
yep. It's your intuition, our beautiful women's intuition. How did you begin to navigate your own healing while also advocating for your daughter's care?
I often tell people, when we lived in the hospital, it was all about Meadow all the time, and we just had to survive that moment. Like, Meadow had to be the forefront, Meadow had to be the focus because, like, there were real life critical decisions to be made, and she had a whole host of complications. I mean, she ended up having a brain bleed at one point, like, she had to be first and foremost. But the second that we got a little bit of breathing room out of the hospital, I was actually looking at the dates here recently. We got out of the hospital with Meadow, like, the first or second week of January back in 2023, and I had my OCD assessment on January 16th. So, like, I already knew that I was not in a good spot, and I already knew that whatever I was doing was not working, and what really, like, drove me to be like, "Okay, like, I have to tackle this right now," is I couldn't sleep. I could hardly eat. Like, I could not do my normal day-to-day items, let alone be a present mom, let alone be the kind of mom that I wanted to be and the kind of person I wanted to show up as. And so I was like, I just have to tackle this head on because I just can't function in day-to-day
Mm.
life right now.
What helped you the most in those early months? Oh, my cat just busted in.
No, you're fine. You wanna let her
Okay.
hang out
She's going
or
to be part of this podcast. She'll probably
I love
jump on my
it.
desk in a moment. Okay. So, what helped you? Back to the question. What helped you the most in those early years or months?
I think for me, because I'm the kind of person where I'm just like, I have to deep dive right now, like, I just gotta do the thing head
She
on.
is.
Cats love me during podcasts. I don't know what it
Yes.
is, but if the person has a cat, they always find me.
Yeah, she doesn't always come in. She busted down that door. She was out there. She pushed it open.
Ready
Okay,
for the
babes.
moment.
Let me put her over here. You are part. Okay. Okay.
But for me, what I decided to do is I actually had the opportunity to do an intensive outpatient program. And so I did 5 to 6 hours of therapy with a rotation of 4 therapists for, like, a month, month and a half. Because when I first did that OCD scale, it was a ranking out of 40 and I scored a 37. So, obviously, it was
Wow.
affecting every area of my life, and it's such a different skill set or toolkit or whatever you wanna call it to try to manage OCD, because when people think like, "Oh, you have mental health stuff, you just go to therapy." When you have OCD, like, talk therapy and getting all that reassurance from a therapist isn't actually helpful, it's harmful, and
Mhm.
what you need to do is kind of go face your fears head on and do exposure therapy, which is, like, a very different just type of therapy altogether. It's a very
Mm.
different experience.
So that helped you a lot as my cat's walking walking across the desk.
No, no, yes, exposure therapy is the gold standard
Mhm.
for OCD, and I had immediate, and I do mean, like, immediate reduction in symptoms.
So, can you explain how that works, the exposure therapy?
I tell people it's like facing your fears head on and realizing you don't die. So, like,
Mhm.
for me, I
Oh,
had
okay.
all of this hyper responsibility around my daughter. So I'm like, if I don't check that she's breathing 19 times every
Mhm.
hour and something happens, like, it's on me because I didn't check. And so that wasn't the first thing that I could, like, start working myself up to, like, or that wasn't the first thing that I could go and try to expose myself to, like, that was too intense for me to think about, like, oh, like, the death of my daughter. And so we started out more gradually. For example, I did still have a lot of contamination concerns following COVID, and then having this baby who was so sick, she couldn't possibly get a cold, she couldn't possibly get COVID and make herself more sick because that could be, like, truly life-threatening to her. But here it was in January 2023, and I'm still, like, wearing a mask everywhere.
Mhm.
So, one of the first exposures that I ever did was literally just walking into a public space without a mask on, and I was on the phone with my therapist, and I was like, "I feel like I'm gonna have a panic attack." I ended up having a panic attack, and she was like, "You just have to, like, ride the wave of this anxiety. Like, you have to, like, just do the thing and realize that, like, you're gonna be
I'm gonna let
you're
you
gonna be
finish your
okay on."
sentence, and then she's going out again. I'm listening. Go ahead.
No, but just to do the thing and realize that you're gonna be okay on the other side
Mhm.
of it. So, I mean, I spent an hour in that Walmart, half of it hyperventilating, but I didn't wear a mask and I didn't put it back on and I didn't, like, feed back into my anxiety,
Mhm.
and I didn't do the compulsions that I wanted to do, which was put that mask right back on.
Right. And how long doing that kind of therapy until it actually clicked?
Honestly, because I was doing so much of it every day, like that 5 to 6 hours of therapy, I would say probably at least half of that time, if not more, was solely doing exposures. Within a week, I was already experiencing a reduction in symptoms.
Wow.
Within a couple of weeks, like, that's why I chose the intensive route because I was like,
Yes.
I'm just so overwhelmed by these intrusive thoughts all the time. Like, I've really got to figure out how to dampen this down to even be able to, like, show up at work, like,
Mhm.
to enter back into the real world because I feel like we lived outside of the real world for so long in the hospital, and that kind of reshaped and molded my brain in different ways too.
Now, do you feel this OCD and anxiety rising up still in certain times, or have you totally erased it?
I actually just, met with my OCD therapist yesterday
Okay.
because something that I also talk about a lot is I'm recovering from OCD, but I'm not
Mhm.
recovered. Like, it's always
Right.
how
It's
my brain
always
is
work in
hardwired.
progress.
Yeah, so it's definitely a work in progress, but if you're not doing the compulsions, they consider you, like, in remission from OCD if you wanna think of it that way. But I found myself last week, I was stressed about something and standing at a gas pump and like I said, OCD isn't logical, but I was having all of these thoughts of like, I don't wanna touch the handle on the gas pump because that's
Mhm.
gross and there's germs there.
Hmm.
And so, can I put this sweater on even though, like, I'm in the, like, thick of summer heat right now and touch the gas pump with the sweater
And
and
then it
not my
smells like gas.
hand?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but I had to, like, stop myself in that moment, and I'm like, "No, that's a compulsion." And, like, I'm
Mhm.
not gonna give in to my OCD, so, you always gotta, like, take it a step further to really, like, ingrain it in. So I touched the gas handle, I didn't immediately wash my hands, and then I went and ate breakfast. But if I had tried to do that 3 years ago, like, I would have vomited at the thought,
Mhm.
like, it would have been so gross and so disgusting to me, and I would have had all these thoughts of, like, "I'm gonna get sick," or "I'm gonna make my daughter sick,"
Mm.
or "this over here." But because I, like, stopped it in the moment and I was like, "No, I'm gonna confront this in the moment and not let that go any further," I'm just actively working in that mindset all the time so I don't go back into, like, a full-blown, I don't know what's the word I'm looking for, like a relapse. Relapse is the
Mhm.
word.
And you think about it like the gas handle. Yes, of course, someone could go and
I know
and
it.
touch it, but the gas, like, it always smells like gas no matter how
Uh-huh.
I use the pump. And then I have the hand sanitizer in the car, I have that.
Mhm.
But, yeah, so that's a lot to overcome because it's like if you got sick, you could get your daughter sick, and she's going through all
Uh-huh.
these surgeries. So
Got extra
I
stuff.
yeah, all that extra stuff, it's like the survival, like, "Oh, I can make her really sick," and it led into this OCD, and it's something you're still working through. And I know so many of our listeners have experienced anxiety or emotional overwhelm after major life events like yourself. What practical tools or mindset shifts helped you move from survival mode into a more empowered space?
I think the biggest mindset shift for me, I think about being in the hospital in general, like me and my husband had this mindset of like, we are a team and we're
Mhm,
all on Meadow's team and we all want Meadow to get better. Cause I think sometimes when you're in the hospital, it becomes this like, you feel like you're on opposing forces. Like you have your medical team saying this, but like you're seeing this in the room, but you're never on opposing teams. You're actually on the same teams. But that was really important even for just as like us as a couple and our dynamic to always like be looking at each other and be like, we're on the same team here together. Like, I know this is stressful. I know this is scary, but like we are a unit and being able
mhm,
to make decisions together because it would have been really easy for him to default to me and be like, okay, like you're a medical provider that has basis, you make these decisions. But I always wanted to like give him the education to and make the decision together as Meadow's parents.
mhm,
But I think even beyond like the hospital time, when I think about mindset wise, I really had to figure out a way of like, I have all of this grief and all of this trauma and like I don't know exactly what to do with it. Like I've made it through made it through the bulk of my OCD stuff now and I know how to manage my brain. But we still live with grief every day. I mean, it's been 3 years since Meadow was born, but like that was not the newborn experience that we hoped for or dreamed
Mhm.
of or envisioned or any of the things. And so to almost lose your child, like, there's no way that you, like, couldn't be different after that moment.
Mhm.
And so for me, like, I was like, "Okay, if I could turn this, like, grief into purpose somehow," which I'd already had this really beautiful lived experience of doing in my business, because what a lot of people don't realize about me is I had a panic attack during a nursing school clinical one time, and they asked me to leave nursing school because they said I was too anxious to be a safe nurse. And what that one day turned into was this really cool education business that had mental health at the forefront of it and how to tackle your anxiety. And so, like, I turned my grief around that moment into something purposeful and meaningful. And so I was like, how could I do that with Meadow stuff? And that was really how I started getting involved in the advocacy world.
Mhm.
And so, if you know nothing about congenital heart disease out there listening, that's totally okay. But the one thing I want you to hear and the one thing I want you to know is that heart defects are the most common birth defect. It's 1 in 100. It is one of the
Wow.
very least funded.
Mm.
And the moment I heard that, I was like, "That can't possibly be true, like, that doesn't even make sense to me."
Mm-mm.
But the more I looked into it, being able to fix hearts is still a relatively new area of medicine, if you wanna think of it that way. It was just in 2009 that there were more adults living with congenital heart disease than children, and what that actually means is it was the first time these children were living into adulthood, like, that's how new this arena of medicine is. But the other thing on the other side of it is there's no big pharma approach to fixing heart defects. It is surgeries and interventions and procedures, and so when you don't have those big pharma dollars, then it's totally different funding landscape and figuring out how you're going to fund what will eventually be the research that change people's lives. So as soon as I heard that stat, I was like, I've had this cool entrepreneurial experience. I've had this cool nurse practitioner experience. I have this personal story. Like, I feel like I am the right human to, like, go and speak to legislators about this and be on, like, a more, like, federal national landscape of what does this look like. And so that was really kind of my start into the advocacy work that I do today.
And speaking of your advocacy work, you and your husband's $15 million legacy gift to Norton Children's Hospital is so moving, so incredible. What was the emotional journey behind making such a monumental decision? And what do you hope this gift makes possible for other families?
I get chills, like, every time I even, like, think about the fact that we did that and how cool that is
Mhm.
because it was just 5 years ago that I was making 40 grand as a nurse every year, and so to, like, have this, like, big jump in my life to even do a gift like that, like, I'm so grateful for that all the time, and it's, like, never lost on me, like, what a big deal that is. But for us, like, when we when we were in the hospital, even through, like, all the complications that Meadow went through, we were just, like, so in awe and so amazed by the work that they were doing there. And Norton Children's, which is our local children's hospital here, like, I can't tell you what a big deal it was when we found out Meadow was sick and to know that we weren't gonna have to travel for care, because I immediately assumed, like, we're gonna have to travel multiple hours away, maybe even a plane ride away to, like, get her the surgeries and care she needs. But to be able to do it at home and, like, be around our people and have access, like, every once in a while, we would go shower at our own house just to have a little bit of familiarity for a moment, like, that access was incredible, and it was very healing for us to be able to be at home through, like, some of the scariest moments of our life, and so that was really a lot of the motivation behind the gift, um, was how can we really do 2 things. 1, we wanted to support other families that were going through this because it was a really big deal for me and my husband to be able to be there together because I had sold my business and we were, like, set up to do that, but the very few people have that opportunity, and so we wanted to help other families, and that was where it started, but the other piece of it was really, like, supporting the education, the innovation, and the research to create this really premier cardiac program, because what also a lot of people don't realize is, like, Meadow's care, as long as she lives here, will always be at Norton Children's Hospital. Like, she could be 74 years old, But if she needs a procedure, they're going to do it at Norton Children's Hospital because of her heart and because she had these congenital defects. Because we want people who are specialists and experts in her heart doing her
Mm-hmm.
things. And so it was just such a more like long-term vision of what could be created here locally and how could we support like the state of Kentucky because right now, let's say you're born in Eastern Kentucky with a congenital heart defect, which is 5 hours away from here, like you travel to Norton Children's. Um and so we really, really, really just want to like fully pledge our support for all of the incredible, wonderful things that they do every day.
Hold on one second. Hold
Yeah.
that thought before the next question. This one, like, seriously, you do have something. She's picking up your energy because
And so
she's
they
come
love
in here,
me.
but never like this. Like, she's relentless. Okay,
Aw,
buddy,
sweet
baby, you
baby.
got to go out playing with playing with that. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'll be right back. All right. You're gonna have to bang on the doors. You're a troublemaker today. Okay. Okay, now it's closed. She can't push it open, but she's probably gonna bang on it. So
Yeah, no, you're good.
that was something else. My goodness.
A little bit of
Okay.
cat hair.
Yeah, she's starting to shed now. They're just I have two, so she's just over a year. Like she was knocking things off my desk. Okay.
No, she's a baby.
All right. So we're back. Okay. So you named the new congenital heart center after Meadow, and I feel it's such a powerful way to honor her life and her story. What is the legacy you hope Meadow's name carries forward into the world?
That's a loaded question. When I think about Meadow's life, so number one, I think about the boxes that we started to put Meadow into the moment she was born. Whether we wanted to or not, like it wasn't intentional, but we were like, could she play sports? And what does her future look like? And normal is such a subjective word, but like, does Meadow have any opportunity or chance to be normal beyond her heart stuff? And so I love telling Meadow's story and I love sharing about her and I love sharing pictures of her and videos because in every sense of the word, she's a normal kid. Like she had this really traumatic start and she has had all these procedures and she will have more open heart surgeries in her life. But the people who know her today often don't even know that she experienced all of that. It was a few weeks ago, we were at the splash pad, and me and another mom were like, I was changing Meadow, and she was changing her kid, and the kid was like oogling Meadow's chest because Meadow has this scar from her belly button all the way up to her neck.
Mm-hmm.
And for a moment, like, I kind of forgot that that wasn't commonplace. I was like, this is just our life. But like, that mom had no idea that Meadow had had all those surgeries and we've been friends for months. So it's not something that like has to come up all the time, which is really cool. So I really like rewriting the narrative of what congenital heart disease can look like. And obviously, we've been very fortunate with Meadow for her to be able to recover from the things that she has experienced. Um, but I also the other thing I think about all the time and I actually talk about in my advocacy work is living on the cusp of medicine with Meadow. Because when she was born, we were told that she would have at least 2 heart surgeries her first year of life and then go on to have 3 to 4 more throughout her life. And so every time she grows bigger, she has to have her heart valve replaced. But even in just the last 3 years, like, that narrative is also being rewritten because of the awareness, which creates the funding, which then creates the research, and for Meadow, our current hope is, I'm, like, crossing my fingers, crossing my toes, is that she actually only has 1 more open heart surgery
Mm-hmm.
when she's, like, between 5 and 7, if we can make it that long with this valve, and then they'll be able to do alternative procedures in the future. And so it's really, really, really beautiful and cool to see the impact of the advocacy work and the impact
Mm-hmm.
of the research and the funding in real lifetime in a real life kid. And it's certainly and surely not just Meadow. There's so many kids out there like her. Like she has one of the most common set of birth defect or heart
Mm-hmm.
defects.
Must be so incredible to see what the advocacy work is doing because, uh, I mean, a lot of ways our medical system is just broken. They're
Oh,
focusing
yes.
Oh, well, I was being kind there. A
I'm
little.
a
It's
nurse
very broken.
practitioner. Healthcare is a business. Like, at the end of
Yeah,
the day, healthcare is a business, and that creates problems.
big problems. And people like yourselves and your foundation and everything that you're doing is helping to solve real life problems, especially with our children. And I can't believe the 1 in 100 have this defect and there's so little funding, the least
I know.
funding.
It breaks my brain.
And we're funneling so much into, we won't get into these things, but it's just a beautiful thing to see this kind of thing happen and seeing the changes that are making because of it. Now, as far as like how she might only have to have one because everything's changing and you have your advocacy work where there's more funding and more research, is that because the valve is better or something that can last longer, or you don't have to keep taking that out to put a new one in? Is it because of the technology involved and the other? I mean, I know lasers are a lot with surgery now. Something along the lines of laser or something where they can go in and fix it while it's still inside of her.
So it is the technology. So she still
Mhm.
has to have her valve replaced every time she
Okay.
grows bigger and every time it, kind of wears out. But the difference is at her next surgery, if she's large enough, they will go ahead and fit her for an adult-sized valve even though she will be a child.
Okay.
And then if they can do that, what's gonna happen in the future is instead of having to reopen her chest every time she needs that valve replaced, they'll be able to do an alternative procedure called a heart cath, where they literally, like, thread a catheter from your groin up to your heart and do it that way, but that's, like, same day in and out procedure versus open
Wow.
heart surgery, like, there's so many opportunities for complications because I think, like, when you think about heart surgery and you're on the outside and it's very abstract and you can't really wrap your head around it, what you don't realize is, like, to do these surgeries, to do the surgeries that Meadow has had, like, they literally had to stop her heart and put her on
Oh
bypass.
my God.
So every time you're on bypass, that is so many opportunities for complications, no matter how
Absolutely.
well you do it. So to even have a glimpse of an opportunity to do it via heart cath instead and be in and out the same day, like, that, like, lights up and excites my entire body. Like, I'm like,
Yeah.
that's what I'm, like, working towards.
Yes. And you're going to see so many different changes. I mean, she's only 3.
Yeah,
So, and technology is advancing so fast, and especially
every
with,
minute.
yep. And, now we've got robots and
Mhm.
AI learning things. Like the robots are learning way faster than humans. Like they're going to come up with something that, and then some humans going to take it and put it into something. So that's a good way that AI and robots and humans can work together, is to develop something that can be life saving for children and
Yeah.
not have to go through such processes like open heart surgery. Like every time they go in, like my heart, like my stomach drops of what you and other parents have to go through every time they're faced with that kind of procedure.
Well, also just to, we were talking about intolerance of uncertainty earlier, but, like, everything about Meadow's care is kind of uncertain in a way. Like, we
Mhm.
don't know exactly when her next surgery will be because that's subjective to her, so there's never any, like, set timeline, set procedure, and so, we might show up next year to her appointment, and it might be time to go ahead and do it, or it might be
Mhm.
another 4 years, but that 4 years can make a world of difference in, like, how she's treated.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I can see that how things are just going to keep advancing.
Mhm.
Even you're hoping for that process now in 4 years, but there might be something even more revolutionary and better. But at least now you can work towards that one thing. But I'm sure in the next 4 years it's going to be even more evolved. So I
Yeah,
think
who
you're looking
knows?
at something much better. Even then, she's pounding on the door.
Let me back.
She loves you. She is literally good times. I love her. We just roll with it. I'd love to hear in what ways motherhood to a medically complex child transform your understanding of love, resilience, or even your own spiritual growth.
Wow, I think in being Meadow's mother, I live this really, like, intense spectrum all the time of grief and joy. So, like, obviously, we have all this grief, but we also, on the other side of it, have, like, exponentially more joy and more awe in watching her grow because, like, we knew that was never guaranteed. And so I think I get to, like, soak in so much more of being a mom because of that, and I get to, like, appreciate it so much more in the moment. And I think for me, like, spiritually. Like, it was obviously, I never wanted to learn that Meadow had a heart defect, but it was a really good gut check for me and a reminder for me about my own intuition when we found out Meadow was sick. And I kind of got more access into leaning into that because, as we talked about earlier, I felt my entire pregnancy that something was wrong. Everybody told me I was crazy in a very loving way, but then to find out, like, my intuition was correct and that Meadow was actually sick, like, that was, like, a moment of, like, reprieve for me, like, "Oh, I'm not insane."
Mm,
But as she's gotten better, I feel like I've really been able to tap into a lot more different things, like, for example, right now, I'm, like, super into astrology. And if you
mhm,
had told me before Meadow was born that I would be into astrology right now, I probably would have laughed at you, like, in a really nice way, but, like, that wasn't something I really had access to. I was very much leaning into, like, I am an analytical, logical nurse practitioner, and that is me as a human, but, um, even just, like, through astrology and, like, having this different lens on myself and being able to lean more into my intuition, I feel like I get to show up as more of myself, and I definitely, like, utilize that in my advocacy work too.
mhm. Yeah, that whole motherhood, it just throws you into this whole other
You're a
level
new
of
human.
intuitive. Yes, superhuman. You're protective. You're tapped into something greater because literally you're the portal between two worlds. Like your womb space. This being
Mhm.
just came from the other
Oh,
side, and you're so connected in so many different ways. Like every way you're connected
mhm.
to hear that you're not crazy. Like I wasn't imagining things. I'm just being a paranoid mom. Is no. It's your real intuition tied to this being that gave you that hit of insight, and then
Yeah,
after she was born and to find that this was really the case, which was saddening in itself, but it just solidified that I'm an intuitive. I'm woman,
yeah,
I'm intuitive, and I've got these
yeah, I just
spiritual
have to
gifts.
listen to it.
Yes, absolutely.
Mhm.
How has I know you're still in the nursing profession, you've been there for many years along with your advocacy. How has Meadow's journey reshaped the way you teach or lead others in the nursing profession?
I think that in the nursing profession, what I actually love the most was teaching and
Mhm.
educating, which is how I ended up creating this education business, and through being Meadow's mom, I just have, like, such a next level access to empathy. Like, I have so
Mhm.
much more empathy in my teaching, I have so much more empathy and compassion and capacity for the humans in my life, and I don't even think, like, it's necessarily all about being Meadow's mom. I think some of that too is tied to going through OCD treatment because one of the ultimate, like, tools in my toolbox through my OCD treatment was actually just self-compassion. I was really, 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 really hard on myself. I set a very high standard for myself of, like, how I show up in the world and what that looks like, and when you become a business owner, you kind of end up, like, almost, like, tapping into this masculine energy of, like, how you have to show up and how other
Yes.
people perceive you and all that. But through my OCD treatment, being able to, like, just soften a little bit and have more compassion for myself only lets me have so much more compassion and capacity for others too and all the things that they're experiencing.
You said that so beautifully. And so many women, whatever their circumstances are, the life circumstances, we've lost that connection to our feminine essence, which is intuitive, which is compassion, which is balance, which is flow. And we are in our masculine energy so much, which we do need to survive, to get things done, to plan, more action based, and to hear that you were able to soften to it because it is a softening
Mm.
into that flow. Speaking of that, what role do you think empathy, lived experiences, and heart-centered leadership play in the next generation of healthcare?
I think there are more robots and more AI and more technology and all the things, which can be incredible. What also becomes, like, equally more important in how we show up is that human to human connection because we're going to be lacking it more and
Mhm.
more and more. And so being able to show up heart centered, being able to show up as an empathetic human only becomes more important, but even more so in healthcare. Healthcare is so intimate. Like, when I think about, like, working in the hospital and especially being an oncology nurse, like, I had, like, such an intimate relationship and a personal relationship, whether I wanted to or not, with all of my patients and all of their families and all the different pieces, and so I think leaning into those things as the world continues to evolve around us is just gonna be incredibly important. I even
Mhm.
think of, I am in the midst right now of doing, like, astrology readings and stuff for friends
Mm.
because that's so fun for me.
I love that you're doing that.
But even then, I'm like, it's so nice to be able to show up as a human to human because,
Mhm.
I could have ChatGPT generate all of my readings and just go off of
Exactly.
that, but I'm like, there's this really cool part of, like, what's my intuitive hit on this chart?
Mm.
What are the things that I see? And, like, you can use the technology and the resources and tools, but, like, showing up as your full self and showing up as a human is so important.
Mhm. It's so important and it's so lost and it's going to become even more so. I'm even hearing in 10 years from now, we're not even going to, especially raising a daughter in the next generations in 10 years, they're not even going to have phones anymore. It's supposed to have the glasses. And
Oh,
it's easy
wow.
for me to be say, not me, Felicia, I'm out.
Yeah, I can't
I'm
even
gonna move up
process
to a
that.
little community. Yeah, no, I'm not doing that. So yeah, that aspect is so important is that human connection and it's becoming a lost form and we can't lose it. And yeah, it's like humans have empathy. I just had somebody on like a couple episodes ago where we were talking about AI, where like is data and technology, where we are wisdom. We are the
Mhm.
keepers of wisdom and they can't do it. They don't have the empathy. It's not the same. So we need to really keep that interaction with humans. So that's so important these days, especially when it comes to people's wellness and healthcare and our
Mhm.
children, our hospitals and all that. So I would love to hear if someone is listening today and they're feeling overwhelmed by life they didn't expect, which happens, like a diagnosis, a mental health battle, a caregiving role. What's one truth or gentle reminder you want them to hold on to?
I think for me, and sometimes it sounds harsh, so I don't intend it in that way, but something that I have to reflect on and come back to all the time and has been really life changing for me is you're not a victim of your circumstances.
Mhm.
And you have so much agency in your life and you have so much ability to change your life in any moment. Like you're usually one or two, like not like one or two next right steps or right decisions or whatever else from creating a life that you really love. And I know that because I have the lived experience of doing that. Like 5 years ago, well, just over 5 years ago, like it's a nurse practitioner school full time. I was making 40K as a nurse, as I was just talking about, and I was also teaching nursing students, and I was somewhere 7 days a week, and I was kind of just, like, running this rat race all the time, and then within 2 weeks of creating my first review course and starting at my business, which I felt like was just gonna be a little side hustle thing at the time, my whole entire life was different already because I had expanded my capacity and my ability to think beyond being a victim of my circumstance. And once I was able to like claim that agency and ownership,
Mhm.
like everything that came after it was so much better. So even when things are really hard and like we found out Meadow's diagnosis, which obviously was the last thing that we ever wanted to hear, we still had agency in that moment to be like, this is really hard and this is really sucks, but like here's how we're gonna show up and this is what we're going to do about it, and there's so many things we can't control, but, like, here are the 3 things that we can.
So, with all this new advocacy and education around this, and this new role that you're stepping into, what's lighting you up most right now, personally or professionally, especially as you step into this next season of advocacy, giving, and leadership?
I would say I felt super lit up this year when I went to DC to advocate. Like, it was just, like it's so cool to do it in person and feel like you're, like, truly making an impact versus, like, you write a letter or you sign a petition online or, like, all these things that get thrown at us all the time. But to be able to, like, show up in DC and talk to our congresspeople and hand out pictures of Meadow and our
Mhm.
story and really feel like that was making a difference, that lit me up, but also equally lighting me up right now. I've just barely touched on it because 'cause we've talked about a lot of different topics, and I don't wanna be scattered or confusing. um, is how much I'm enjoying astrology. Like, that
Mm,
super lights me up right now because I think when people think about astrology, they think of it being very prescriptive. So, like, if you're a Scorpio, you're cold. If you're a Cancer, you're moody. I
there's so
hate
many
all of
different
that.
things. There's so many different aspects that contribute to that.
Yes. And also, astrology is just like a lens. It's not a
Mm-hmm.
label, it's absolutely a lens. It doesn't have to be prescriptive. And so I've been able to start working with my chart and my sons to have a different perspective on myself and how I show up in the world. And so I very much use it as a mental health tool. And now I'm helping my friends and family use it as a mental health tool. So that's just been really fun for me. So I actually, in the last couple of months, have started my own astrology podcast with my best
Oh,
friend
awesome.
just because that's fun for me. And, like, I want to do things that are softer and do things that are more fun. And so, like, I'm always trying to balance, the masculine and the feminine of, like, when I'm, like, doing advocacy work, that's very masculine energy for me. But when I'm doing my astrology stuff, that is very much more, like, feminine, like,
Mm-hmm.
flow, like, just
Mm.
fun for fun. Fun for fun is huge as an adult because we don't tap into that enough.
No, we don't. And as you say that, we're tapping into our lineage, like our history. We're the keepers of knowledge. We magic and the stars and like people came to us for our knowledge and we were tapped into the rhythms of nature. And it's such a beautiful thing that a lot of us are coming back to. Now I'm curious, where are you learning? Are you taking a course somewhere or is there somebody you're studying with?
Oh, there's somebody I'm studying with. I met someone last year
Mm-hmm.
who just knew things about my life there's no way she
Mm.
know, just
Wow.
from looking at my chart. Like, it wasn't like a medium experience. She literally was just like, "This date, this date, this
Mm-hmm.
date." So I've been learning through her, but I also tell people all the time, I kinda learn astrology through osmosis. Like, I'm taking in books and podcasts and, like, different, variations and iterations of people's take on
Mm-hmm.
astrology because some of it is a bit subjective, but a lot of it is objective. Just trying to figure out, what works best for me and my brain. So I have a couple of different places that I'm tapping into to just keep expanding my own mindset.
Hmm. That's so cool. Like you have so
Really
many
fun.
things lighting you up. You have this lighting you up spiritually, and then you have like your purpose in life to with what you're advocating for and tying it all together. And now you have a podcast. What's the name of your podcast?
It's called The Cosmic Group Chat with Sarah and Kenzie.
Cosmic Group
And it's
Chat.
very much geared at astrology for beginners. And
Oh,
so
great.
me, when I started learning astrology last year, I was like, this is overwhelming.
There's a lot.
This is so complex. And, like, how do you boil this down and actually make it useful? How do you
Hmm.
use it as a mental health tool? And so that's mostly our lens.
I think it's so cool with astrology because there's literally stamps where the planets are all
Hmm.
aligned and depending where your rising is, and then there's yogic signs, and then there's the
Oh, there's so many
rising, like,
different
I can't there's
branches.
so much involved. It's not just your Cancer sign, which is the Western, astrology, and then there's the Nord nodes in Pisces. Well, I'm North Node in Pisces and learning about your personality traits, your past lives, your purpose in life. It's so cool. And I find that it's a really good way that people can really understand themselves. It makes sense. And
Exactly.
I can see how that can help with helping with people's mental health. I know when I'm in low times in my life, going to that kind of guidance really helps me. It shows me, I think it's better than, I mean, talk therapy is good, but then I also think that shows me a much bigger picture than just what's might have happened in my family history. It
Yeah, it
goes
helps you, like, zoom out and get some perspective a little bit. I just love the perspective of
yeah.
astrology.
That is really cool. So your podcast, I would love for people to my audience to know where to find you, work with you. Are you on social media, YouTube?
Oh, I
You've
am
got your
everywhere.
podcast. I'm going to put that in the links.
So, I have just a personal website, sarahmichelleboes.com, that's
Mhm.
Boes, and there I share more about, I'm working on a memoir at the moment, and I have a whole Heart Mom page and really, like, my advocacy work and who I am as a human. And then I have a couple of different social media accounts. I am at Sarah Michelle MP. That's MP as a nurse practitioner on Instagram. And I tell people all the time because they think, like bots run it or virtual assistants or whatever. I actually reply to all those messages. So
Mhm.
if you want to talk to me, that is the place to do it. But we also have an Instagram just for the podcast as well, which is Cosmic Group Chat Pod. And so we post a lot of astrology content on there. So Sarah Michelle MP is more like me as a human doing all the things that light me up across all the various buckets of nurse practitioner, heart mom, astrologer, entrepreneur. But then Cosmic Group Jackpot is like all about astrology.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And those, of course, will be in the show notes. Everybody be sure to find her on all those different, her website, her links, listen to her podcast. And I would like to end this conversation because I know you've got to go. I ask this of all my guests. This is my favorite thing to ask. And that is, what does it mean for you to live with an awakened heart, especially in this chapter of your life?
I think for me, living with an awakened heart is kind of like, I was talking about that spectrum earlier between grief and joy. I think living with an awakened heart for me is getting to feel the full spectrum of emotions. I, as I've like managed my mental health and as I've become a heart mom and all different things, you start wanting to compartmentalize and you're like, I only want to feel happy or I only want to feel this. But I think like the real journey of life and the real journey of being awake is being able to feel it all and appreciate it all.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. The whole,
The whole thing.
appreciating the whole thing. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for coming on the Awaken Heart podcast. Good luck with whatever you have on in
All the
4
things.
minutes. We ended on time. And I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.
Thank you.